Yes, it is Dillon Brooks pack watch time, everybody. The news finally dropped that Memphis, quote, under no circumstances will not be bringing back the poker of bears. Mr. LeBron James is old, and I am not afraid of him, Dillon Brooks. Mr. I shot 31% from the field in the playoffs. Dillon Brooks will not be back in Memphis. And now, the big, fat, big, juicy piece of news that blasted across our TLs this morning, courtesy of none other than Shams Charania. And this news is about the poker of bears. Dillon Brooks. Guys, I'm going small screen for this. This featured image is foul, by the way. The featured image that The Athletic did for that article is absolutely foul. So the tweet reads like this: the Memphis Grizzlies have informed pending free agent Dillon Brooks that he will not be brought back under any circumstances, league sources tell The Athletic. There was a later report from, or not a report, but a continuation of this report from Bleacher Report, I want to say it was, where there were contract extension talks at the beginning of the season that never amounted to anything. And Dillon Brooks did not do himself any favors this year. And we're going to get to this. But before we do, we got to talk about bad takes. Because there are numerous people in the NBA media sphere, numerous people who have positions on talk shows for large media companies who are doing their viewers a disservice by crafting narratives that aren't even like entertaining. They're not related to any of the goings on. One of these guys that I'm talking about is Kendrick Perkins. His take wasn't even a fucking take. This guy went on Twitter and said, "Oh, I see what's going on in Memphis. They're making Dillon Brooks the fall guy. BS. That free culture is who they've been the last 3 years. Wasn't a problem until they got embarrassed. Leadership needs some of that smoke too. Carry on." This, of course, if you're like, imagine you're a normie and you see Kendrick Perkins talking about this, you would think that Dillon Brooks was putting up Ja Morant numbers this year for Memphis to not extend him seemingly because of the attitude that he had, the quote unquote villainous attitude that he grew more and more into throughout the year. You would think that, they were upset that he called LeBron old. They were upset that he said, quote unquote, I poke bears. And that is simply not the case. This guy stinks. Dillon Brooks stinks. I even said last week in the video that I made, I don't mind this attitude that Dillon Brooks plays with. I think it's fun. I think it's entertaining. I like when athletes have an edge. However, there should be you should not be allowed to call yourself a villain if you're shooting 39.6% from the field. If you're shooting 32.6% from 3 in the playoffs. Kendrick Perkins, please, Kendrick Perkins, I need you to understand. Dillon Brooks did not get extended because of his antics. He didn't get extended because he shot 31.2% from the field in these playoffs. He shot 23.8% from 3. This guy is a detriment to your team. He has, over the course of his career, improved. He improved a little bit from his rookie year after getting injured as a sophomore. And then, he had the makings of being a good quality player. Let's not forget, this is the same Dillon Brooks that averaged 26 a night back in 2021 when Memphis went up against the Utah Jazz. He stinks. The idea that he is a fall guy is simply not true. A legitimate fall guy, Russell Westbrook on the Lakers. All right. Poor performance, yes. However, he was not in a Russell Westbrook on the Lakers, and his performance, admittedly, wasn't even that poor. It was poor compared to previous versions of him. But again, Russ should have not been in LA. He was in a bad position. He was asked to do things he wasn't do. He wasn't able to do. Dillon Brooks, all Memphis asks him to do is defend and shoot threes, and he can't do half of that. And now there have been players in the past who have been nothing burgers on offense. And one of them played for Memphis. Do you guys remember? I don't know if all you youngins who are listening remember Tony Allen, but Tony Allen was one of, fuck it, he was the best perimeter defender of his time. Just incredible. And he played for the Memphis Grizzlies. He was a member of the Grit and Grind Grizzlies. Dog shit offensive player. Averaged 8 points for his career. Shot 28% from three. I mean, overall, he shot close to like 48% from the field overall, but not not a reliable source of offense in any way. But do you know how you offset that? You offset that by being the guy who Kobe Bryant and Kevin Durant said was the best defender they ever played against. That's how you offset that. Dillon Brooks is an above average defender at best. He's not first team all defense. He's like nowhere even close to Tony Allen. I think that Tony Allen, as a freshman in college, was probably better at defending NBA players than Dillon Brooks is now. But to insinuate that the Memphis Grizzlies front office is making Dillon Brooks a fall guy is just a completely asinine point that should not be allowed to be repeated. Actually, I don't want to say that. That's kind of mean. Like, yeah, Kendrick Perkins is entitled to his opinion, but that is a dog shit opinion. It's simply untrue. How are you, dude? You can't be the fall guy if you're shooting 31% from the field. It's like Memphis, under no circumstances, is not bringing back Dillon Brooks, because under no circumstances did Dillon Brooks make any shots for them in the playoffs. They're not going to pay this guy 18, 19, 20 million a year, whatever the fuck he felt he deserved. They're not going to pay him 20 million a year to fucking shoot themselves in the feet. They're basically playing 4-on-5 offensively, and his defensive production isn't even enough to offset that. Because, like, yeah, you have defensive specialists throughout the NBA, but all of said defensive specialists are elite defenders. Dillon Brooks is not that. And he's not giving you enough on offense to even, like, consider. Like, I don't give a fuck that he's the fourth option on that team. If your job is to make threes and you're not making threes, your team is not going to he's not going to bring you back. And, like, I'm here for all of the get ready to learn Chinese buddy jokes because, you know, it's funny. But, like, there's just a realer conversation to be had. And again, I keep falling back to this point. Like, there's no issue with Dillon Brooks talking trash. I like trash talk. I think it's good for. I think it's good. I think it's healthy. But, like, if the NBA should find players who talk trash while shooting less than 40% from the field. The only way you avoid that is if you're like an Allen Iverson type guy. Like, you're hovering around 40%, but you're averaging like 28. Like, Dillon Brooks should not be allowed to talk trash. It should be like a $500 fine. No, it should be like a swear jar where every time he talks trash to somebody, he has to put $1 into the Brooks jar. It's like the Mendoza line in baseball. If you're batting under 200, it's the Mendoza line. If you're shooting under 40%, that's the Brooks line. And if you're talking trash while shooting below that figure, you got to pay up, because we have to, like, you can't be bad and talk trash. You can't, dude. This, like, it's so poetic. Like, hold on, we gotta go back to this fool's page for a second. He called LeBron old, and then proceeded to have 12 points, 7 points, 11 points, 8 points, and 10 points. Dog, you shot better than 36% one fucking time. How is LeBron, like, 13 years older than you, and you can't even, like, sniff 40%? What is the opposite of an attribute boost? because that's what Dillon Brooks deployed before this series. Just in no way, shape, or form was he equipped to deal with anything. And listen, I think that I think Dillon Brooks 1,000,000% signs a contract somewhere else because I feel the main reason these talks broke down was because Brooks was asking for way more money than Memphis thought was justified. And I tend to agree because if Dillon Brooks came to me and was demanding all this bread, it's like, dog, you're shooting 35% from the. What makes you think you're deserving of that? Like, I think 13 mil a year, like his rookie scale deal, would still be a little too much. Pay 13 million a year for a guy to shoot 1 of 8 from 3 every night. I'm gonna pass. I'm gonna pass on that.